I'm just going to say a couple of words of introduction to the movie and introduce you to a couple of the people who made it happen. First of all, I want to say there's a delicious irony to me about being in the Chinese theatre, because this theatre was built in 1927, 2 years after Our Story Begins. And the first film that was played here was a silent movie, so our film begins in the silent era. And the film was the Cecil B. DeMille's film, The King of Kings. So there's a lovely irony that we're playing the King's Speech in the theatre that the first film was The King of Kings. The story of this film really begins in the Second World War. The story of how this film was made begins in the Second World War with a small boy who had a dreadful stammer. And that little boy used to listen on the radio to King George VI. And his parents used to say, well, if the king can cope with his stammer, maybe there's hope for you. And this child with the stammer who listened to the king on the radio was the writer of our film, David Seidler. And David grew up with the king being his childhood hero, his inspiration, his guiding light, and long dreamed of making a film about King George VI. And it was only after he wrote Tucker, His Man and His Dream, for Francis Ford Coppola, that he finally felt the confidence to write this subject that was so close to his heart. And he began to research it and got these blips on the radar about one Lionel Logue, Australian speech therapist to the king, which intrigued him. And he discovered one Valentine Logue, the son of Lionel Logue, living in London, who revealed that he had papers in his attic, diaries, handwritten diaries of his relationship with the king. And they wrote to the palace, David wrote to the palace, asking permission to use these diaries, and the Queen Mother wrote back to David and said, please, not in my lifetime, the memories of these events are still too painful. And David waited, little realizing the Queen Mother was going to live to 186. So it was a little while later that David finally sat down to write it. By this point, he'd lost touch with the Logues. He was living in California. And the lovely end to the story is 9 weeks before the shoot, my wonderful production designer Eve Stewart found the grandson of Lionel Logue, Mark Logue, living in London, 10 minutes from where I live. And he had the very same handwritten diary in his attic. This is something that no historian has ever read, no royal biographer has ever read, no member of the royal family has ever seen. And I got it in my hands. And we set about incorporating some of this material. And, a couple of the funniest lines in the movie are written by King George VI and Lionel Logue. But I'd like to welcome onto the stage the man who really this film has been his boyhood dream, David Seidler. Please welcome. And then I'd like to welcome the film's producers who are here tonight, and we have both Australia and England represented in the producing department. We have Gareth Unwin, who was smart enough to option this film when it was only a play script, and we have Ian Canning, the English producer who worked with me so closely during the shoot, and Emil Sherman, his Australian partner. Please welcome to the stage my wonderful producers. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Weinstein Company, particularly Harvey Weinstein and Bob Weinstein, who are both here tonight. They had the foresight to spot this film months before production, when no one else was willing to take the leap of faith with us, and I'd like to thank them for taking this leap of faith. Thank you. I do hope you enjoy the movie. Thank you.